Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Muhammad Al-Aqad. Today, I will be revisiting the translator's ideologies in translating Quran lesson learned, a study that highlights a notable gap in empirical research on the ideologies of translators of Quran, specifically in relation to the translation techniques. So this research actually focuses on the influences affecting Quran translators in Malaysia. It also analyzes translations produced by complex Nashr Quran, which are approved by the Department of Quranic Text Control under the Ministry of Home Affairs here in Malaysia. So using a critical case study methodology and drawing from theoretical framework of Vinay and Darblint, as well as Molina and Alpier, the study will uncover and will look into the translation practices that are not neutral among the translators of the Holy Quran or translator of the religious text, rather than they are shaped by subjective and ideological influences, often based on the expectation of target readers. So here we can see some of the findings that we have already drawn on the article. We can see also it's clearly mentioned that some of the translators, they have subjective ideological influences regarding the translation itself, which is also important to note that. So before we proceed with that, we have to dive deeply into the historical context of Quran translation. So now let's have a look at the historical context of Quran translations through different periods. First of all, here we are going to start with the early translation, meaning that here the first known translation of the Holy Quran appeared as early as the 8th century. These early efforts were aimed at helping non-Arabic speaking Muslims in order to understand the text. Often these translations were accompanied by commentaries to ensure that the original meaning of the text and the interpretation were preserved. Then that age followed by a medieval period, which is as Islam start expanding into that era, into a new regions. So translation became more widespread during the medieval period. The need to address the culture and linguistic diversity within the growing Muslim world influenced these translation efforts, which became more sophisticated and more needed. During the Renaissance era in Europe, there was a growing interest in Islamic texts, including the Quran. So this led to translation into Latin and other European languages. Many of these translations were used for comparative religious texts, and also in some cases reflected the bias of the translators themselves. So recently in the modern era, Quran translation have become much more accessible with versions available online and versions available in a wide range of languages. So the focus has shifted towards accuracy and fidelity to the original Arabic text, while also considering the contemporary linguistic and cultural context of today's readers. So next slide. Here we are going to focus about the Malay translation of the Holy Quran. The first Malay translation of the Holy Quran appeared in the late 13th century. after the conversion of sultans in the Pasai Kingdom, North Sumatra in Indonesia. So this marked the start of Islamic influence in the region and the Quran's culture significance. While actually early manuscripts are linked to this period, physical evidences dated back to the 16th century, with most surviving texts from the 19th century. Distinct illumination style from regions like Terengganu, Java, showcases the artistic diversity in Malay language and also in Malay Quranic manuscript. Terengganu Qurans are admired for these intricate use of gold, while Javanese Quran featured bold and colorful design reflecting local culture. These manuscripts contribute richly to the culture heritage of the Malay world at that time. In terms of techniques and ideological influences, here in this article, we are using Vinay and Darblint framework and also Molina and Elber framework. So Vinay and Darblint, we are going to use several of these translation techniques and procedures, which are direct translation and oblique translation, in order to emphasize the choice between direct and oblique methods based on the culture and linguistic context. And in terms of Molina framework, we are going to focus on the dynamic equivalence and communicative translations to convey the meaning effectively. And also, we will highlight the importance of translators' choice influenced by ideological beliefs. In terms of ideological influences, also the translators' personal social culture and political ideologies plays a significant role in shaping the selected choices of the translators. Also, influence of religious and cultural political context in Malaysia on the translation of the Quran were really mentioned that time. The balance between maintaining the original meaning and adapting it to the local culture was really noticed that time. So here, as we just mentioned, the most important finding that we have noticed so far, there is some culture differences in terms of translating the Holy Quran text from Arabic, the origin text in Arabic, into Malay. So there are some culture differences, and also there are some mistranslation and misunderstanding in terms of selecting some words. So the ideological influence on the translation. So what are the influences on translation? The ideological influences on translation here, we have listed several influences, including religious orientation. Moderate translators normally emphasize tolerance, while radical translators stress strict adherence to tradition. This can lead to differences in how certain verses are translated. Culture context as well. So translators adapt phrases to fit local customs, influencing interpretation of concepts like family and gender rules. Political ideology. State-sponsored translators or government-sponsored translators usually align with the government interest, while independent ones may offer diverse perspectives. Language and semantic also. Word choice, like translating the word jihad or the word struggle or Holy Quran or Holy War, reflect the translator's ideology in certain cases or certain verses. interfaith relationships or interfaith relations. Here we mentioned, and we are speaking about some translations foster dialogue with other religions, while some other translation emphasize differences. So in terms of the reader expectation here, reader expectation of a translation plays a significant role in shaping Quran translation in Malaysia. Usually translators align with prevailing ideologies to meet these expectations. Moderate versus transnational ideologies. Moderate ideologies usually focuses on inclusivity and adapting to local context, while transnational ideologies seek uniform interpretation aligned with the global Islamic movement. Here we have also some of the comparative analysis between the official and unofficial translation of the Holy Quran, which is quite interesting here to mention that most of the translations sometimes, if it's official, it's a kind of a government bind culture or government bind interest. So the official translation endorsed by religious or government authorities, they adhere to a traditional Islamic interpretation reflecting the socio-political stance of the state and promoting uniformity in religious practices. While on the other side, unofficial translation produced independently. So these translations may offer modernist or reformist views, incorporating diverse social culture influences and the challenges in terms of traditional interpretation. Lastly, we have the ideological differences. Here we have the official translation aligned with conservative ideologies in terms of official translation. Normally, the official translation align with the conservative ideologies, while on the other side, the unofficial translation may reflect progressive perspectives impacting the religious discourse and practices within the community itself. So here, then we move to some case study regarding the complex Natural Quran. So the translation of the complex Natural Quran here, it's quite interesting because this complex has launched in Malaysia a few years back, and the main aim for this, what we call for this center, Islamic center, is to publicize and to market the Quran translation and to market the printing of the Holy Quran. So this center located in Precinct 14, which consider the second largest Quran production center in the world. It aims to print 1 million Quran copy annually, with 70% of domestic use and the rest for other Islamic countries. The complex usually focus on the printing of the Holy Quran and facilitating the printing and that dealing with the Holy Quran in terms of printing, in terms of translation, and in terms of interpretation. So the complex also include exhibition galleries, training spaces, and also various other facilities. So in terms of translation practices, the center focuses on clear, accessible translation while maintaining the original meaning of the Quran as much as possible. So translators balance literal and interpretive methods to convey its nuanced meaning. Then we have the ideological underpinnings. The translations reflect Malaysian social culture and religious context. promoting a moderate and inclusive interpretation of Islam in line with the national policies, fostering unity within Malaysian Muslim community. So it is quite interesting also to see some of the findings here. As we mentioned here, the ideology of the translators will always be present in the target text. When reading the target text, we are reading the translator's voices. The following example of a translated verses illustrate the difference between the two verses. For example, here we have the word ibqu, the word anfiqu. The word anfiqu, it's come from the root word nafaq or nafaqa, as shown in the table. So mark the difference between the two version terminologically. The clause infaq means biri nafaqa. Di jalan Allah min biri makan di min gulukan sidika, which the English interpretation or the English translation for this Malay verse is to give a charity for the sake of God, feed and make donation. So the study reveals that translators' ideology in Quran translation can be identified. So it can be identified not only through their values and beliefs, but also through the specific translation techniques they use. It finds that translators from the Ministry of Religious Affairs lean toward a moderate Islamic ideology, while Muhammad Talib, who is the Persian Quran translators, support the translation Islamic perspectives. This conclusion is based on their use of techniques such as established equivalence and discursive creation, which are influenced by their social culture and religious background. The research further incorporate textual and contextual intertextual analysis as well to offer a deeper understanding of the ideologies guiding these translators. That's all, and thank you.